So, Dave, we know a lot of regulatory and tax changes are on the table with an upcoming Biden presidency. It's probably too soon to speculate about what changes will actually pass, but when would we expect to start seeing any change that might affect the housing market?
Well, that's a great question, especially because Biden is on record as saying that he plans to reverse the Trump tax cuts. Now, an awful lot depends on January 5th. January 5th will be the election in Georgia for both senators. And the Republicans are slightly favored in those two races, but anything can happen. And so, if we do retain the two Republican senators in Georgia, then I think it will be difficult for Biden to push through his so-called, reversing the Trump tax cuts. Now, one of the things that he has specifically said that could be a big issue for real estate investors is that he has talked about changing the capital gains tax. Now, the capital gains tax is a very important aspect to investing, and sometimes one of the things that some of the far left miss sometimes is the fact that most Americans are involved in investments. Most Americans have either an IRA or at work a 401k if the company's for profit, or a 403b if the company is nonprofit. But the point is that a huge portion of the American population is involved in the stock market. Most of those are protected investments. They don't really care whether their capital gains protected or not. But many, many people are impacted by the capital gains tax, and sometimes it's presented as some type of a wealth tax, or we've got to get even with those rich people. But these taxes do impact a pretty wide range of the population. To use a good example that's relevant to our company, Advantage Asset Management, is if you have somebody who has been fortunate in life, and perhaps instead of selling their first two houses, they've been renting them out, and AAM is managing those houses for them. At some point, they may get close to retirement age and say, "Hey, you know what? Instead of renting those houses for me, let's vacate them, let's clean them up, and let's sell them." Those houses would then be sold as in long-term investment property, and traditionally would be subject to the lower capital gains rate instead of the income tax rate. But if the capital gains rate is changed, then that could have a big impact. Now, your question specifically asked about timing. I think even if the two senators lose in Georgia, the two Republican senators, that it would take at least a year for Biden to change the tax laws. So I would say if you're planning to sell something, depending on what happens in Georgia, I don't think you have to rush to sell it before the end of 2020. But if things change in the U.S., the balance of power changes in the U.S. Senate, then people might want to look at selling things in 2021 rather than take a risk of paying higher taxes in 2022.